We have an annuity solutions division, which is run by Joe Corio, who is our senior VP. Life markets division, and that is run by Steve Clemens. He is the vice president of life markets. Senior care products, which handles, of course, all of the 65 plus programs, and that is run by Karen McDaniel. And then our health plan options division, which I run the traditional individual and group health care, as well as the dental for individual. And then my counterpart, Christy Saul, oversees the specialty lines, which includes the self-funded, ancillary, and supplemental, both for group and individual. So we run a full market here, and if you've not heard of URL Insurance before and want to do business with us, please reach out to me or go to our home screen and find out who we are, meet our staff. You can see all of our departments. Another feature of our site is My URL, where you can refer an agent to us. We have online commission statements. We have a $150 per year E&O policy. These are all the healthcare reform newsletters. We put out a weekly newsletter, and if you'd like to sign up for that, you just let me know. You can email me at debw@urlinsgroup.com, and various other tools to help you, including quoting tools, checking out our rewards and incentives, such as our trip in 2016 to the Grand Caymans. So we have a lot of good things to offer you, and we have a lot more down the pike. That our ETA for some of these new offerings is going to be September. So keep watching and sign up for our newsletters, and I know you won't be disappointed. Just one more point before I introduce Steve and hand it over to him. I do run a weekly TPACA webinar. It's at 9:30 Eastern Time every Thursday. Next week, I will not have a webinar because I will be away, but May 28th at 9:30 Eastern Time, you can come to our home site and go to URL upcoming events, and you can sign up for any of the various training, including my weekly webinars. So without further ado, I'm going to talk a little bit about Steve Jackson. He is the Senior Vice President and Strategic Development and Channel Sales person within PrimePay that really is, to me, the face of PrimePay. Steve and I have known each other many, many years, and we partner very well with PrimePay. PrimePay is a TPA payroll company, and I'm sure Steve will talk about his organization. But one good thing about PrimePay is they don't compete with you. They're not like the typical payroll companies that go out there and try to get your payroll and then solicit business from your clients. So that's a huge thing in today's world, and certainly something to make note of. So I'm going to turn it over to Steve now, and sit back. If you have questions, you can raise your hand by clicking on the little hand icon, or you can just type in your questions and we'll answer them at the end of the webinar. So Steve, thanks so much for joining in and running this webinar for us. Steve? Steve? Might have to unmute yourself.
Not muted.
There you go. There you go. You're unmuted now.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Oh,
yes.
You can. Okay, very good. Awesome. All right, love technology. No, Deb, thank you so much for having me and allowing me to present here today. And as my sentiments are the same, I guess, as I will share. I've been able to have the fortunate opportunity to work with Deb and URL here over the last many years, and there's so many similarities, I think, in kind of our two organizations and how we truly want to try to commit to brokers drive education, drive resources and expertise. You don't see many groups like a URL who is really out there enforcing a lot of the legislative, the regulatory issues of the day, but not just giving you kind of that guidance, which is so important. It's giving you some practical application, right? I mean, just as far as giving you help, so as you talk to your clients, you know how to direct them. And so think the world of URL, and very pleased to be with you here today. So just, what we'll do here, as Deb had said, we want to take your questions. So go ahead and type in your questions in the question box as I go along. There is a lot of content here, but I will do my best in regard to just really bringing it into a place that you understand, but also you know how to communicate it to your employers, okay? So today, you see the title there, Measurement Madness, and I will say that I've got that title right, right, as many employers are banging their head or against the wall. I mean, just, the madness of it all. And then I look at the next section, ACA Reporting Made Easy. I'm like, yeah, I must have been out to lunch. How am I going to make that easy? So what my hope is that we are going to turn this madness into some easy, and hopefully you'll feel that way here once we get through it here today. So if you guys don't know of PrimePay, as Deb had said, we're actually we're a national payroll and business service company. We have a lot of strength in our payroll services and a lot of employee management solutions that surround that. But we also, as a core service, are very much involved as a third-party administrator with FSAs and HRAs and COBRA, ERISA compliance services, and the like. So if you haven't heard of PrimePay before, we'd love to get to know you a little bit more. And this will kind of showcase at least a little bit some of the content and ideas, that we have and provide to our broker partners. So let's get started. The agenda here today, the basics, right? So who needs to comply? We need to understand that. Actually, we do need to understand that, because I will say your employers are probably confused in regard to who needs to comply. Then let's get into some real-life application. I think this is the heart of it, in just understanding a couple or looking at a couple case studies that can kind of bring it to life for you. And then lastly, again, what we'll try to do is putting your knowledge into action. Now what? What are the next steps that you should or could take with your clients? So I show some questions here on the board, and these, as you would look at these are pretty basic, right? I mean, basic to ask, maybe a little harder to answer in some areas, in some employers that you would talk to. But let's look at that upper left. What is an applicable large employer? If I could hear of a question from our groups of clients that we have here at PrimePay, and I'm sure you hear, is that there is very much a question as to if the employer mandate applies to me, right, as an employer. So what is an applicable large employer? Am I one? You cannot make an assumption that your employer gets it. You need to ensure that they understand if they meet that definition or not. And it sounds kind of silly, I guess, a little bit, but it kind of goes to the beige question there below, or in the beige quote box. How do I calculate full-time equivalent? See, you as a benefits broker might be looking at those benefit-eligible employees, but you may not be looking at the entire W-2 base. You might not see that the employer had 15 additional part-time or variable hour employees that would count toward the equivalent. You just see 45 full-time employees or benefit-eligible employees. So it's good for you to have those two questions and calculations kind of completed or helped or assisted by you, and you can help a lot there. In the green, I think everybody, you think about the carrot and the stick to the employer mandate. The stick is talked about quite a bit, right? Could I owe penalties? I mean, at this point, I think a lot of employers feel somewhat more comfortable in regard to what those penalties would be. But then these last two, the purple and the orange, clearly these are bigger questions. Must I measure all employees? Full-time, part-time, seasonal, is it everyone? Am I only supposed to measure the part-timers? when should I have started to measure, these employees? I mean, that's a huge piece, because many employers are getting to answers today, and they should have been doing this actually the last several months, in these last prior months. And then lastly, and this is really that great philosophical question at the end of the day with anything in the employer mandate, what should I do? It's questions about offering coverage, not offering coverage. Should I adjust my employee hours, hire just only part-time employees, not full-time, right? That way I'm kind of playing with that ACA compliance status, or that applicable large employer type of status. So let's kind of dig into, very basics. And what I want to do here is not spend a lot of time in this area, but I really just want to make sure that we have a level set as to what I'm thinking, so that you understand that we're all kind of on the same page. So who needs to comply? And you've seen this definition before. What exactly is the employer mandate, kind of that main definition. And it's this, beginning with plan years effective 2015, employers with 50-plus full-time employees or full-time equivalents must offer medical coverage that is affordable and provides minimum value to full-time employees and their dependents up to age 26 or face penalties. You probably read that many times before, right? So if we were to just look at that on its face, I mean, that is correct. That is the fact. You have two facets. Actually, I'll back up just 1 second. The definition of an applicable large employer is this 50-plus full-time employees and equivalents. The mandate affects all the rest of that stuff, right? I mean, do you offer coverage? Is it affordable, minimum value, and so forth, okay? So there's actually a couple different definitions, and when you get into employer information reporting requirements, that affects all employers, nobody that's, not just those that are not a part of the transitional relief. But in this case, an applicable large employer definition is always based on the 50-plus, okay? The mandate, the penalties, that aspect really affects everything else. So under the employer size, let's just get again, because some of you might be saying, well, Steve, there's some transitional relief, and that is true. So for plan year 2015, just looking at this, we've got, actually, let's look at the equivalent. So 1 to 49, basically for this year and next. They're really, there's no change there for the smaller employer. The employer mandate's not going to apply, at least as it stands here today. The 50 to 99 full-time equivalents. Now, in this year, transitional relief did apply, where it stated that no penalties under the employer mandate would be, provided or assessed if no reduction in the workforce to stay below 100 employee threshold. You had to maintain coverage. You couldn't play with the numbers if you were on the bubble there at 100, bring people down to a part-time status just to get you in that transitional relief. So, if generally speaking, if you're in that 50 to 99 space, you are considered a large employer under the definition, but you're just not going to be assessed that penalty. But in 2016, the employer mandate, the assessment penalty would come in effect as of 2016. 100 or more full-time. Now, if an employer does offer 70% coverage to the full-time employees and dependents, and no full-time employee receives a premium tax credit, okay, then that's additional transitional relief of the penalty. In 2016, employer mandate is in effect. And so just a couple things here, as you see there toward the bottom. The penalties, just so you have the definition, if a penalty is or could be assessed to that large employer, and primarily, here for 2015 would be 100 or more, you take the 2,000 times the number of full-time employees minus 80, okay? And then the original penalty definitions for kind of that A penalty starts here, where it's 2,000 times the number of full-time employees minus 30, okay? So employer size. So, a bit of confusion with employers based on all these transitional relief items is, well, do I still meet the definition of an applicable large employer, or am I responsible for the penalty? And just kind of understanding both, okay? So those are good conversations certainly to have with your employers. So, just some statistics, right? I love statistics, looking at things. About 4% of the employers here in the United States are 50 or more employees. But if you really think about it, about 65 to 70% of all the employees, so the employment flows in this 4%. So it's amazing, right? So a large amount of the employment of these employees is found in this 50-plus environment. So each of you are different, right? As each of you are on the webcast today, you might be focused, your niche is on small employers. Maybe it's the 2 to 50, maybe it's 50-plus, but each of you kind of know your employee base. The good thing is that there's real opportunities, clearly, even in the state of Pennsylvania. Large employers make up about 50% of the total employment in the state of Pennsylvania. So we've got some great opportunities here. You have some great opportunities to drive some education and compliance in this area. So the employer mandate kind of goes back. I wanted to reference this notice because it has not changed, even with a lot of the transitional relief. Clearly, those have added some additional. There are certainly pieces of information that are shared in regard to the transition relief, but in regard to the true definition of an employer, a large employer, you find it here in Notice 2012-58. So determining full-time employees for purposes of the shared responsibility for employers regarding health coverage. Okay, so as we first get into this, we think a lot about the calculation of the employees. So let's just briefly kind of touch on this here with you. So again, the calculation is this: for each employer, total number of full-time employees. And so what we're looking at are those employees who work 30 hours or more on average each week, or 130 hours per month. And a lot of the definition, I get the question a lot from employers, certainly on the payroll side, just about, well, how do I know if they're considered a variable hour or part-time versus not? And really what the IRS states is that if upon the facts and circumstances of you hiring that individual that you expect them to work 30 or more hours on average, then they're considered full-time, period. End of sentence. But for the facts and circumstances, you say, well, this employee is only going to work, 22 hours on average each week, then, all right, now they're considered a variable hour employee, okay? But in the calculation phase, what you'll do is you'll look at the total number of full-time employees, and then you are going to add up your part-time employee total monthly hours, divide that number by 120, so that's a monthly number, and so you're going to find the total full-time equivalents for that month, okay? So I get a lot of questions and confusion there in regard to, well, you said 130 there above and 120, but that's correct, no errors. You divide the part-time employee total monthly hours by the 120, okay? So let's just look at just quick perspective. We have a company here called Creative Scapes, a landscaping company. They have 40 full-time employees and 20 part-time employees. And clearly they're going to have a large number of more seasonal, hourly employees that work during the summer months, okay, as a landscaper. So what Creative Scapes should do is that they look at the previous calendar year. So the calculation is based on the previous calendar year, but they allow for that employer to take any 6 consecutive month period, okay, in the prior year. A lot of your employers are not realizing that, okay? So it is something that you're going to want to confirm as you're talking with your clients. That's determined in 2014 for the 2015 year, okay? So then let's assume, just in this example here, we have 1,720 total part-time hours per month. We divide that by 120, and we get to 14.3 full-time equivalents, okay? We don't have to include seasonal hours because if they are considered seasonal, that's generally meaning 120 days or fewer, so not worked. And so, as a result, as we look at creative SCAPES as a case study, we add the 40 and the 14. We can drop the fraction number there, and we've got 54 full-time equivalents. And in 2015, or on their plan year in 2015, they are going to be considered a large employer. So creative SCAPES at this point, right, can consider, they can start making that determination as to whether they want to play along with the requirements and kind of conform to all of, you know, the specific rules and requirements that are listed, or certainly think about paying, right, as far as a penalty. All right, and those are the fun conversations that you get to have, certainly with your clients. So it's very important as I go through all of this. It's very important for you to have the conversation to ensure that the clients that you're working with are indeed considered a large or an applicable large employer. So let's get into the measurement periods here. And we sit here kind of say 30 is the new 40. You know, large employers. So if you think about the IRS, and just they're there now as part of ACA, as part of the enforcement, right, of the penalties. So there has to be some validation. There has to be some verification. They need to get information from the individual, from the employer. They need to more easily assess whether a penalty should be imposed on an individual based on the circumstances of that case with the individual, or based on the circumstances of the employer, okay? So a large employer, it behooves a large employer to measure their employees, their variable hour employee base, because there will be enough instances where the IRS will be validating if they see that an individual has gone out to healthcare.gov and they have qualified and received a subsidy. They will need to confirm, one, you know, does that employee have, does he work for an employer? Is he employed, or was he employed? And then determine, is that employer an applicable large employer? Were they offering coverage? Were they offering affordable coverage, right? So in a, I'll call it audit type of situation, it will be it's very important for employers to measure their employees and to have that data right at their fingertips so that they can prove or disprove based on the situation that they would be faced with. So large employers must track their employees, and we're talking about what the requirement states is that we're only generally, yes, it's only 30 hours or more per week, or at least 130 hours per month. Those type of employees that would fit those parameters, okay? Does an employer, are they required to measure full-time employees? They're not, okay? However, there's status changes to full-time employees over the span of a year. And those employees could have a reduction in hours. They could get below the 30-hour mark. And so at Prime Pay, we believe, it's our opinion, that an employer should go ahead and measure all employees, you know, of the company. That way, they're kind of addressing all those various needs. But the requirement really sits on the variable hour employees. So you're going to include all hours worked. You're going to include hours paid but not worked, and that's going to be those items such as vacation, you know, PTO days, leaves of absence, things of that nature. Now, what the IRS has done is that they have provided a framework, okay? Do employers need to follow this framework? No. Certainly if an employer kind of creates, I guess, something different, that is fine. But the framework that they have provided is pretty sound. And based on that it came from them, we might want to utilize it. That way, in any kind of an audit, we can accurately reflect that, hey, we followed your framework to make this happen. So there were three main phases that the IRS had kind of created here as part of the measurement periods. And so you just need to get to know kind of the terminology. You might hear phrases such as look-back period, and standard measurement period, and a lot of those times it's synonymous. They're very much the same. So there's three phases here. We have a standard measurement period and an initial measurement period. The standard measurement period, sometimes called the look-back period. Standard measurement period is for all ongoing employees, and initial is for new hires, so newly hired employees that would come in. An administrative period, and I'll touch on each of these, but administrative period just kind of gives time for that employer to assess the results of the initial or standard measurement periods and determine what those next steps would be. And then lastly, you have the stability period, which is kind of how it states. And you kind of need to keep things stable, status quo, with that employee. And we'll go into some further detail here on that. So the standard measurement period, this is for all ongoing employees. Now, there's also an initial measurement period, and so the months are the same. So the length of the standard or initial measurement period can vary between 3 to 12 months. Each employer can choose the length of periods that would best suit their needs, okay? It's actually, it's very important that the employer has that flexibility. Every employer is a little different. Some have some, seasonality, or have, there's just different times where they're going to hire employees, not hire employees, maybe greater times of the year where there's greater amount of turnover that could exist. Or new hires might exist. And so you're going to want to structure a standard measurement period around the length of time or period of time in a calendar month that best fits, their needs, okay? So it can vary between 3 and 12 months. Now, you can also, as an employer, based on different types of categories of employees, you can actually set up different classes or lengths of your standard measurement period. And I've listed the 4 items that the IRS has stated, where you have union, non-union. So you could vary the lengths of periods between union and non-union, salaried versus hourly, employees of different entities, employees located in different states, and so forth. So you have to be consistent, right? Just like any kind of standard benefit offering, need to be consistent based on that class. Ensure that you're not being discriminatory like we see a lot in the benefit world. But these 4 types of categories can be used, and you can vary the lengths of those periods accordingly. So the standard measurement period is for your current employees, and the initial measurement period is for your new hires. The administrative period is kind of, as I had said before, is the period for the employers to evaluate the eligibility of employees. As that standard measurement or initial measurement period comes to an end, the employer does need at least a little bit of time, 30 days. Think of kind of your normal open enrollment period, right? You need a little bit of time to gather the information, find out who is eligible or not eligible for benefits, and then if they are eligible for benefits, it's kind of getting all the enrollment kits, and information, benefit information together so that they can actually make their election, enroll, and so forth. So the administrative period can be up to 90 days. So basically what we'll see out there is from 1 month to 3 months, up to 90 days max. It's not required to have an administrative period. It makes a lot of sense. Most employers that we see are adopting an administrative period. And what I've seen here primarily is in the 1 to 2 months is generally what I have seen. The stability period. The stability period is for, as it states there in the definition, period for ongoing and initial employees that have completed 1 standard measurement period, okay? I always read that and it's like, it's so technical. But the stability period basically says this, okay, if you had an employee in the standard measurement period that did exceed over 30 hours on average each week. So therefore, in the administrative period, you know what? We need to offer this employee coverage. That employee elects coverage. during the stability period, the employer cannot revoke coverage, based on hours worked. That employee needs to go through their entire stability period and kind of remain status quo. They either have the coverage or they do not have the coverage. But the employer cannot make any changes based on the hours worked, okay? So as you see there kind of in the brackets, there's a 6-month minimum on the stability period, or it can be no shorter than the standard measurement period, okay? All right, there we go. It wasn't working there. I got it to work. All right, so I love this quote by Mark Twain: "A man who carries a cat by the tail learns something he can learn in no other way." Okay, see, each of us on the webcast here today, we know not to pick up a cat by the tail, right? I mean, there's going to be some weird things that are going to happen. But, you do learn by doing. So let's review some case studies here that I think, or I hope, will shed some light on some of the things here that we've talked about, okay? So here, let's just assume here, January 2015, which is actually on the first of the month, Company A, we have health renewal that's falling on January 1st, here 2015. Many had many clients that renew. You will have many that renew on the first of the year, right? So just showing an example here of where this employer has chosen the standard measurement period and the initial measurement period at a length of 12 months. And the administrative period is at 1 month, so they wanted to give at least a month's time to assess the results from those standard and initial measurement periods. And then the stability period is at 12 months, okay? So kind of keeping consistency with those employees, whether they had coverage or not, over the next 12-month period. All right, so as we look at our timeline, because many of us, we're clearly picture people, and as I am, I kind of need to see both to kind of put it all into perspective. So what I'm first going to show you here, and let me get to this. What I want to first go to is the stability period, and let me get my marker here for you, my little spotlight. So as you look at the blue. What you first start with as an employer is figuring out the lengths of periods. They're first going to think about, what are the needs of our organization? What are the lengths of periods that are best for us, okay? And so you determine those lengths. You actually think about what those lengths are, and let's get them down. So this employer has chosen these lengths here below and below right, okay? So then you have, the blue, the stability period, the blue, January 1 becomes the beginning of your stability period. So one thing we know right out of the gate is when the stability period is going to operate. It's going to operate here from January 1 through 12/31, okay? So then we do kind of a reverse timeline. So Company A wants to do a 1-month administrative period. So, okay, well, that comes right before the stability period then, okay? And then that means that the standard measurement period is before that. It's 12 months prior to the admin period. So the very first standard or look back, measurement period that this employer would have done here as of January 1 would have gone all the way back to December 1st, 2013 through November 30th of last year to actually measure their employees so that they would know through the administrative period which employees would need or require coverage, okay? Now, what you also see here in the purple is that the standard measurement period starts and stops on the same calendar date every year, okay? And in this one, I'm showing you a 12-month. I'll show you one other example here that has a shorter standard measurement period to kind of put that into perspective. But the standard in this example, it's going to start on December 1st and end on November 30th, okay, each and every time. So let's kind of keep moving along here. Again, you see here that the standard measurement period begins again on 12/1/2015 through November 30th, which then you have the additional administrative period, and the stability period again begins on January 1st. Okay, so let's look at a new hire and kind of put this a little bit more even in perspective. And I'll put these up here on the screen so I can use my spotlight. So as you see here, so let's say we hired this employee on March 1st, 2014, okay, and we wanted to utilize a 12-month initial measurement period for new hires. So you could have employees that are starting on March 2nd. You could be covering, you know, a new hire on March 10th. You know, you could have 3 different hires in March. Each one of them will carry their own specific or unique initial measurement period. So this new hire that we brought on, he starts March 1st. That's going to carry through February 28th. So again, let's assume we hired this employee and we assumed they were going to work about 25 hours a week on average, okay? So now this employee completes this initial measurement period, and in the administrative period, we're now looking at the results, and we see that this employee worked actually 32 hours on average each week. Therefore, based on the employer mandate and the willingness of the company A to play and not pay, we're going to offer this employee coverage because they averaged over 30 or more, okay? So we offer, they elect, and between April 1st and March 31st, the employee is going to continue to have that coverage, okay? We cannot take off the coverage or terminate the coverage from that employee during that time because they are sitting within the stability period. Now you notice here is that as this employee is nearing their stability period, once they complete a full initial measurement period and stability period, they begin to be counted in the then current or concurrent standard measurement period. So you'll see here this employee actually begins to be counted or measured in the standard measurement period of December 1st, 2015 through November 30th, 2016, okay? So you think about it, employers are hiring new hires, you know, all the time, all throughout the year, and so you're going to have these initial measurement periods starting and stopping, stability periods starting and stopping, and that employer is going to need to understand when to drop coverage, add coverage, and so forth. It's going to be a continual kind of a process, you know, throughout the year, okay? So let's look here at another example if we can. All right, so this one, well, we're so uniquely calling company B here. Their renewal is July 1st, okay? And in this case, with this particular employer, the standard measurement period and initial will be set at 6 months. The administrative, the same here at 1 month. And the stability period then at 12 months, okay? So we now have a stability period that's longer, you know, which is fine. It can't be any shorter, all right, than 6 months. It can be no less than the standard measurement period. So in this case, it could be 12 months. And I'll explain why here in this particular example. So let's pull up the standards here again, just to reflect kind of what we've discussed here before. So in this particular, I get my spotlight. I had stated that Company B's renewal is on July 1st. So that means the stability period starts on July 1st. And let's see, this employer wants to have 12 months of the stability period. So the stability period is set. We know that it's going to be July 1 through 6/30, okay, of each year. All right. So in this case, kind of going a reverse timeline, we have the administrative period that precedes the stability period. And since this employer wanted a 6-month standard measurement period, that means based on a July 1st, 2015 renewal date, that this employer should be measuring its variable hour employees as of 12/1. So the standard measurement period for its ongoing employees will be 12/1, 2014 through 5/31, okay? Taking the calculation, the information, and the results in the administrative period, and then providing those employees who require that coverage, you know, starting July 1st, okay, and holding steady. So you notice here now that there's a gap, right, in the standard measurement period. We don't have anything, you know, in those other months. The standard measurement period will begin and end on the same dates each and every year. Okay, So let me get back to my pointer here. All right, so if we keep following this further here, you see that the stability period is going to continue each year. Okay, we're not changing the scope of that, and we'll explain here that stability period. Actually, I'll explain it here now. The stability period, you would want it to, in this example, you want the stability period to be at the 12 months, because having it prior, if you think about employers, adding and terming coverage all throughout the year, it's easier for that employer to really have that stability period be longer and at that 12-month period, because then you're really operating in the same renewal period. You're terming, adding, all at that health renewal time. So the standard measurement period might be at a certain set time, each and every calendar year. But now that stability period, the time for that when that employee needs to have coverage or not have coverage, there's consistency. There's not a lot of additional paperwork. The employer is kind of doing the same paperwork each year and at the renewal. Okay, and that's on the the standard measurement period and the stability. So let's just assume here now we have a new hire. Okay, because this is always in the mix, and this is something that the employer is not going to be able to get away from in regard to, terming or adding somebody on coverage kind of in the middle of a year, okay, because you're going to be hiring employees at all various times throughout the year. So in this example, we have a new hire that starts May 1st, 2015. And in this particular example, the initial measurement period is 6 months. So that goes from 5/1. We're going to measure this employee and ensure that are they averaging 30 or more hours each week or not. So in the administrative period, we're going to look at the results. If it has been determined that this employee has worked 30 or more on average, then we need to offer them coverage. So company B offers coverage and they elect coverage. And so the stability period here is now actually, and I'm showing it here at 6 months. So the initial, actually, I don't have that consistent. That should be for 12 months, at least in my model. So this would actually be for a full year, okay? And so that stability period for that employee should remain consistent throughout that entire stability period before any change is made, okay? And during that stability period, they also, as you see here in this example, they will begin to be measured concurrently in the standard measurement period, there as well. So there's actually kind of two measurement periods that they're going to be measured from once they begin and are going through that stability period. Okay, so hopefully that's a little helpful in kind of shoring up for you at least a picture as to how the measurement periods would work. There's if I could sit here and say that there's a set example of what each measurement period, kind of the status quo, what are employers picking and choosing from? What we here at PrimePay and see a lot is a 12-month measurement period. So a standard measurement period is at 12 months. An initial measurement period is at 12 months. The admin period does vary between 1 month and 2 months. And the stability period then would also be at 12 months. So a lot of employers are using the 12-month, length as kind of the standard, but that's certainly, there's more to be seen here as we see how employers adapt to this. So as you get into the penalties, clearly, there are penalties for noncompliance, and this is, again, when you think about the measurement periods, the whole reason that an employer is going to want to measure is due to the verification validation process, right, and ensure that if an employer indeed does want to play, they need to have the facts, the data behind it to support it, okay? If not, you certainly have these penalties, and these penalties haven't changed. I showed you the transitional period here for 2015, where that definition here for penalty A, it's clearly a little different. It's minus 80 instead of 30. But the 2000 penalty can be a big nut to swallow here for many employers. But the one that's kind of the I sometimes call it the tack hammer penalty, is this penalty B, right? Because you're going to have employees of an employer, could be a large employer, clearly from a large employer, that doesn't go on the employer's plan for whatever reason, goes on to healthcare.gov, qualifies or seems to qualify for a subsidy, and that all needs to now be verified. And so what you don't want is employers that do want to play, that you want to ensure that they're not also offering coverage, but they're also offering affordable coverage to the employees. And that's still at 9.5%. So the affordability is at 9.5% of the W-2 income, okay? Not household income. We still have the safe harbor for the W-2. And a lot of this data will now be given to the IRS through the new information reporting requirements. So the 1094, 1095 forms, a lot of this information now will be given to the IRS so that it's not the IRS just picking up the phone and calling an employer and, hey, do you comply? They're going to be able to see real live data and know whether you did offer coverage and offer affordable coverage to the employee. So another good quote here, Jim Ron, to be a master communicator, all you have to do is follow a simple 3-step process. First, have something good to say. Second, say it well. And third, say it often. It takes a little while, I think, for employers to understand all of these requirements, right? There's a tremendous amount of information here, and until you kind of go through it a few times, put it into examples for the employer, you might have to just say it often, to your employer clients until they can actually kind of more fully grasp what is going on. So just action items to take into consideration. And I just put a few things down, and maybe as you look at some of these, you sit here and go, this is like no duh, right? But I will say this, and I have worked with hundreds of payroll clients of ours across the country. And I'm going to tell you right now, your clients do not get this. They don't understand it. The very first point here where is the delay is over, and that whether you as an employer are considered a large employer or not, I'm going to tell you right now, they have not been doing their calculation. They did not do their calculation in 2014, which means that they don't realize yet that they're a large employer or not, and they clearly have not began to measure their variable hour employees. So it is very important that you have that conversation with each of your employers, and as I had mentioned before, the benefit eligible employees are not the total number of W-2'd employees, and you might have a different view of their size, and so that's why it would be important for you to have that additional conversation with them to ensure whether or not they truly do need to comply with the mandate. The second big bullet here, depending on the plan year, the effective date in 2015, you need to consider the following. So talk to your employers. Here at Prime Pay, and I will say for other payroll providers, we are guiding the employer back to the benefit broker. The payroll company is not determining the length of the periods for the employer. We're not attached in that fashion. We simply want to be an order taker as we're maybe figuring out the reporting structure and the needs of the employer. So we direct the employer back to you. And so you might be getting calls because the provider's doing that. So really begin to talk. You can have a great conversation here with the employer and figuring out what the best length of the measurement periods might be. Another thing, too, is tracking. Employers today should have already begun tracking their employees. I spoke to an employer here about 3 weeks ago. They have 500 employees, very nice-sized employer. They're just getting started with tracking. It should have started last year, right? So tracking should have already begun. The bullet here before the big one there, but how will this measurement of ongoing and new hired employees get completed? I think, and this kind of goes towards the final bullet there of driving a solution, but I guess I even want to change those words to say be a part of the solution. Many of you might sit here and say, well, I want to give guidance. I can give factual information, but I don't want to get too heavy into the compliance. I don't want, anything to affect my E&O or whatever it may be, right? But you can clearly get involved a lot in these discussions with your clients and your employer. If you think about the data that's needed to measure the employees, where is that found? A lot of it clearly is found in payroll, but maybe there's some information in an HR technology platform. Should this employer just kind of bring this all in-house? Should they outsource this functionality and let someone else do it, buy a software program, utilize a payroll provider, or is this something for you? As a benefits broker, are you able to drive, a stronger value proposition for what you may be to deliver, for your clients? I mean, I don't know. That's kind of where your differentiator is going to come in. But where I say drive a solution, yes, you do need to drive them today because many are kind of sitting a little bit, and you need to kind of get them into the action mode of actually doing this. But I would just say more, be a part of the solution because you're going to be very impactful and you're very much a trusted advisor in helping an employer with these key decisions, very important decisions here going forward. So I'd be remiss if I didn't tie in the madness of my topic into the ease of reporting, but it can be easy with certain types of ACA reporting. There's in essence a couple ways to do it, right? An employer today could go and outsource a vendor-based software, and each month they're going to have to take data wherever it's housed, probably in payroll or in other resources, and dump that or upload that data into their software kind of piece solution to ensure accuracy of that information. The other way around it would be directly through a payroll provider. And so, I at least want to mention, I'd be remiss for saying that, we do provide instant reporting for employers, and we provide it really on 3 different levels. We have a large employer report that actually runs the calculation of their FTE status every month. And it also reports all of the measurement activity for all ongoing employees and all initial hired employees. And so it tells you as a broker and the employer which employees are coming to their end on their measurement periods, which are in their admin periods, or who's starting their stability periods. And it gives you an active opportunity or proactive opportunity to assist and help and support your clients through this process of adding a new employee onto the plan, terminating an employee from the plan, and so forth. I mean, you're going to have COBRA issues, different things that you can truly be engaged with on that. We also have an affordable plan report, which will actually provide an estimate as to the anticipated wages for the year, and if that employer is making the cost of coverage affordable. So based at the 9.5% of the W-2 of that employee. So a very important report as well. And then lastly, we also want to reflect if you are a small business, fewer than 25 employees, we also can provide a small business tax credit report, and that does provide a solid estimate for a small business whether they would qualify for that particular credit. So it can be easy. The easiest method, because the data is so fresh all the time, each pay period, would be through a payroll provider. But there are excellent resources, software systems that are out there that can do the same thing. It's just that data would have to get into that system to make it accurate. So as follow-up here today, I know one thing that we wanted to provide and give to URL for you all today is that we have created an ebook, an employer mandate ebook that we are going to give to each of you here for registering and attending that will kind of provide a kind of a hodgepodge of all the different facets of the employer mandate. So we'll talk about the measurement period and so on and so forth. So a great little PDF, a little booklet that you are free to use to kind of look back and get information on. There's a lot of pay or play calculators URL. Deb, you might have something there that they can utilize. On our website, on our resources page, we have a similar calculator, just a general, that an employer could go on and run a quick calculation. It's not filled with payroll data. They just have to enter in their information to make that happen. So with that, that concludes at least my part, my content here for you today. Deb, I want to turn this over to you, and I don't know if there were any specific questions maybe that I wasn't able to address that we could take a couple minutes maybe to do that.
Absolutely. Thanks, Steve. I really appreciate it. And as we mentioned, it is a difficult topic, so if anyone does have questions, please feel free to type them in the boxes. I did answer a couple of questions. One question in particular I'll read again. If a group has full-time employees, or I'm sorry, full-time equivalents, and the group is determined to have over 50 employees with the part-time calculation, does the group then have to offer insurance to the part-time employees? And you can go ahead and answer it, and I won't tell you what I answered. I'll just let you know if I was right or not.
Well, no, that's very good. Yeah, so part-time, there is no requirement for an employer to offer insurance to its variable hour employee base. So could an employer do that? Sure, right? Be consistent. You absolutely could as an employer. But from an employer mandate, they're looking at you just have to provide coverage to full-time employees and their dependents, okay? So even though there might be a very large amount of variable hour employees and a much smaller number, right? Maybe it's a restaurant franchise or, just different entities. We run across them all the time where they have a few number of full-time but a large number of variable. But if they are over 50, they would be considered a applicable large employer. So now those things, the employer information reporting applies. All these things kind of apply, but from a mandate aspect, this employer would only need to be required to provide insurance to the full-time employees and dependents.
Right. And I kept it much easier, and I said that they don't have to offer to the part-time employees unless they go through a standard or initial measurement period and work 30 hours or more. Then they're
yes.
not considered part-time, which is
that's very good. Yeah, you're absolutely right, because after that initial measurement period, if they are over 30, clearly you would have to at that point. But you're right. Nope. You had stated it correctly. Awesome.
All right. The questions are coming in, but I thought maybe if you could just address one more time the fact that if when you're hiring an employee that if they are expected to work 30 or more hours per week, then they're considered full-time at that point.
Yeah.
Is there a specific length of time? If you know that you're hiring an employee and they're going to work 30 or more hours per week, but the term of their employment is only going to be for 5 months.
Yeah. Well, there is a certain, I'll use an example that we even have here. We have summer interns, but they're working full-time here at Prime Pay. So summer interns, we know that it'll be short-term, but they are considered full-time. And actually, under the rules, ACA, we have to offer them coverage. They're part of the eligibility. We're going to have to offer them coverage. So the fact, what the IRS kind of just says, they say it kind of over and over again, and it's kind of why I say it how I say it. But if the facts and circumstances would state that they will work more than 30 or more hours on average, then they would be considered full-time. They should be eligible for coverage right out of the gate, right, based on your existing eligibility requirements, the first of the month after 30 days, not more than a 90-day wait, that type of a thing. So you would provide them coverage. But if the facts and circumstances are different and clearly out of the gate we feel, no, you're just going to work 22 hours. Yeah, that's what the job entails. That's what we expect you to work. If based on that, then no offer of coverage needs to be made until the initial measurement period has ended and if it determined whether they did indeed work fewer than 30 or 30 or more. Okay.
So David asks, does an employer have to fund any part of the dependent's coverage? And that's a no.
Yes, correct. So the employer, based on the mandate, is just, we're looking at self-only coverage. So it's the lowest cost plan, ACA plan, and the single coverage only. So it's not reflected on dependent, spouse, family coverage premiums, only on the self-only coverage is what that is based off of.
Perfect. And there's a question from Wesley. He says, are applicable large employers between 50 to 99 full-time equivalents subject to the 60-55 and required to provide 1094 and 1095 2015?
Yes. So, so we're linking into this reporting. It is so important, and so it is a great question because this is kind of confusing. So, a 50-plus full-time employer, so 50 full-time employees and/or equivalents. Okay, so 50 or more, 50 to 99. They fit the definition of an applicable large employer. So, therefore, although there is a transitional relief in 2015 where they would not have a penalty assessed because they fit in that 50 to 99 space. However, they are still required, because they are defined as an applicable large employer, they will be required to do the 60-56 reporting, so the 1095B and C forms, okay? So a carrier might, if they have fully insured plans, self-insured, some of the data might fall on the carrier versus them. However, the employer is still obligated and required to file 1095B and C, okay, for both. So yes, they will be required to report.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm typing in and listening. Victoria asks the question, and I'm not really sure if I'm going to read it correctly. It says, if an employer has 50-plus employees, then is the only time they have to provide health insurance. Or maybe she's saying that is the only time they have to provide health insurance. And I would say, go ahead.
Okay. So, if they do fit into that 50-plus, at least under the mandate, they would have to offer insurance to the employees and dependents if they wanted to comply, okay, with the law. Yes, the mandate applies only. The penalties only apply to those 50-plus. So anyone that would be considered a small employer under that would not have a penalty, so therefore could make decisions, as it pertains what's best to their business, whether they offer coverage or not.
Right. Okay, and Britt says, hello. He says that he's a longtime listener to your show and multi-audience participant for measurement periods. He says if you were the agent and have determined that they do their own payroll and has not begun with measurement periods, do you have a cost-effective service for a group?
For the measurement period, so one thing with Prime Pay, right now at least, our solutions are tailored and connected to our payroll service. So for a client, as I kind of showed you with the reports, where do I have it here? So like on this page here, just for our payroll clients, we do provide currently, and it's free. We provide these reports free to the client as long as they have payroll or we are providing payroll service for them. But we do not have a standalone service, and I just say, maybe as of yet, I know we're looking at a few different things, but right now everything it's not standalone. It would be connected directly to our payroll service. I mean, there's a lot of pros and cons with that, but that's currently our solution.
Okay, thank you. Herbert says, is the waiting period for eligibility 60 days or 90 days? And it's actually 90 calendar days. You can't, you have to have an offer of coverage to a full-time employee in 90 calendar days. But what you'll see a lot of employers doing is doing the first of the month following 60 days so that they're coming on at the beginning of the month as opposed to mid-month for prorated billing. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to just agree with you. That calendar days is just needs to be emphasized. So if it lands on a Saturday, you better get them covered. Yeah, exactly. So good.
Okay, Kathy asks a really good question, and this is about the question on your interns, because they're working this summer, so they are working less than 120 days per year. So she says that that she thought you said seasonal employees don't count, so they don't count towards the number of full-time equivalents, but if working 30 hours, they have to be covered, question mark.
Yeah, correct. So it's right on. I think you said it correct. So if on the calculation to determine your full-time equivalents, you can remove those seasonal employees out of that calculation. But in regard to employment, I'm sorry, not employment, but just, you're bringing them on about coverage. Yeah, you're going to need to provide coverage based on that full-time or non-full-time status. So if a seasonal employee is expected to work the number of hours, 30 or more, then you do have those eligibility concerns. Okay.
All right. Benjamin says, is it true that small businesses a small business is being expanded to include employers with 99 or less employees in 2016. With this in mind, will employers with between 50 and 99 employees be penalized beginning 2016? So
that's a great question. So the applicable large employer, we are not seeing the definition of that change, so it will still remain as a definition of applicable large employer status, and the employer mandate will be 50 plus. But you are correct. The kind of the small group status, I guess, of plans, mandates, will now go to 99 here in 2016. So I am not seeing, and Deb, unless you're seeing something different, but I've not seen anywhere yet where they have specifically said that the applicable large employer definition was going to change from 50 plus to 100 plus.
I've not seen that either, but, anything is certainly possible tomorrow or within the next minute, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So those are the end of the questions, but I wanted to thank everyone certainly for joining in and to let you know that you will be getting a copy of the presentation, which includes the slide decks, and also, as Steve mentioned, the Navigating the Employer Mandate, the ebook. I think it's very helpful. It goes over a lot of these examples as well as some others about the penalties and calculating employees, etc. So it's very timely and certainly very useful. Steve Jackson, it can be reached at sjackson@primepay.com. And you can always contact me. I'm happy to pass on his information. They have a great broker concierge program that you can earn a bit of commission on some fees for bringing your group clients there. So it's a really good package. They're a great organization. And again, I thank you so much for joining in. And you can contact me as well, which is 800-926-8875. I'm at extension 113. And my email address again is debw@urlinsgroup.com. Steve, did you want to say anything in closing?
I just thank you for allowing me to present. Again, Deb, really appreciate it. If you guys have any questions, you certainly know where to reach Deb. Please feel free to reach out to me as well. We are, we're committed to trying to provide as much information as we can to help and support you in the field. So where we can do that, we would appreciate it and be glad to help. So, Deb, thank you.
Well, thank you, Stephen. Would you mind just giving them your contact number?
Sure, absolutely. So my email is sjackson@primepay.com, and you can reach me directly at 484-323-1446, and I'd love to hear from you.
Excellent. Thanks again, everyone. Have a great weekend, and thank you again, Steve. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye.